Why the hat? Because it's very cold in here this morning. It's winter. Winter in Australia, June. Whilst having my cup of coffee this morning, I took across the road to the coffee shop this little book, Animal Farm. And as I read it through more thoroughly this time than I had before, I thought, George Orwell, the man was a genius. He could write for children, he could write a story for adults, and he could write a story with a second purpose or inner meaning, and do it so well. Now I'm thinking to myself, when I first read that book, that would have been way back in the 1960s, and I was in my early 30s. It was mandatory reading. You see, I left school at 14 years of age, and I had no formal education beyond leaving school at that age. I did do many courses, such as navigation, meteorology, seamanship, all types of things, specialist courses in my various lines of work. But when I reached the age of 32 or 33, I realised I'd better get some more formal education, because I had nothing to show when I applied for a job. Nothing to put on my, what is now called a CV, which in those days didn't exist other than a reference. So I went back and studied at evening college. I got my leaving certificate, which was the higher range that allowed you to go to university. I passed that okay. The following year I sat for the HSC, Higher School Certificate, which had just come in. Passed that as well. And in that same year, or was it the year before when I did the leaving, I did another exam called the Commonwealth Public Services Third Division exam. This put me into a higher category where I could obtain a better job. Nose running. It's the cold weather. Anyway, I thought I'd read something of fiction for a change, because I wanted to practice what I preach. I often tell people here who are into public speaking and storytelling to read stories. Read short stories, read fiction, read poetry, because that is where the powerful words lie. Of course, most of my reading, and probably a lot of yours, is non-fiction, factual books, instructional books, books of learning. All very good, but often do not contain those colourful, emotive words which you find in fiction. Hence, a second reading of this book, Animal Farm. And I thought to myself, I am really reading this book this time. I'm starting to understand it far more thoroughly than the first time. Because when I read it for the first time, it was just one of many books which had to be studied. Shakespearean plays, different types of English composition. And there was really no fun in it. It was study. But now I read, well, I have done for years, read for pleasure. Read so that you can be carried away by the adventures, by the visions, by the imagination of the writer. Anyway, I've said enough, I think. If you want to become a good speaker, good storyteller, someone who can really hold an audience, one of the ways to do it is to practice by using your imagination. And one of the ways to develop a good imagination is to read storybooks, fiction, poetry, short stories. These will develop in you the words and the imagination you need to become the best that you can become.